The Quarantine Sessions podcast with J. Cole.
What's up, man?
What's up, Jake?
Welcome.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's an honor, man. So, yeah, it's awesome to have you on here. I first encountered your art when I was like 12 or 13 years old, so I've been following your creativity for a really long time and watching it develop in a lot of really interesting ways. And I've done a lot of workshops with you. I've known a bit about your background, but I feel like a lot of people here watching this might not be as familiar with your story. So I thought maybe we'd start out with you just sharing a bit about your personal history and kind of what led to you being where you are now.
Ooh, cool. Well, thanks for having me, Jake. I remember you fondly from back in the days too, back on the conceptart.org days, when you were just a wee lad. So yeah, on my end, it's exciting to see your growth and evolution as well.
Thanks, man.
Yeah, for sure. Gosh, the story, I don't know where you want to start. A lot of things got me to where I am right now. A lot of different factors. Gosh, it's like so broad. It's hard to like pinpoint a thing.
Well, I remember in some workshops you were talking about how when you were younger you had this formative experience when you were really young that was kind of like a near-death experience that seemed to really impact your life's path and creativity. And I was hoping you could share a little bit about that.
Oh, okay. Trauma talk. Cool. Yeah. I think it's
Is
a
it
thing.
too early in the conversation for
I
that?
mean, it's like, you haven't even bought me dinner yet. We're going to go right into that. It's okay. But, yeah, it's something maybe, but as we lead into that, something that I've realized, I've been thinking about it for a while, but I think that my thoughts kind of have become a little bit more mature around it, is really understanding just the general relationship between art and trauma. How much I think some people kind of underestimate how one of the causal factors of many of the incredible songs and paintings and plays and things that we have, like things that, some of the greatest pieces in the museum, when people kind of ask, like, how do I become a great artist? Part of me in the back of my head is just like, wow, like, which kind of like fucked up experience do you want to have that's going to totally change your life? Like there's definitely a lot of, I think art is, one of the forms of art is it has the ability to kind of transmute pain into a type of medicine, either whether it's a self-ingested medicine, or it's a medicine for other people, or it's kind of a collective healing. But yeah, I wouldn't be the person that I am today without having to endure some pretty intense trauma when I was growing up. Yeah. It's just like, I think that the connection and the dance between like trauma and art is something that is, I think sometimes it's kind of, it's an overlooked aspect of the creative journey,
Mm-hmm.
But, yeah, so my trauma story, I back up. I grew up in Boulder, well, in Lyons, Colorado. I'm here right now. I'm on the farm, and I had a really, everybody has, there's infinite amount of different sort of roads to trauma. And out of all the types of trauma that I could experience, I think this is actually a pretty good one. You know, like I didn't have any real family trauma. I had great parents, amazing parents, grew up in a really healthy house. You know, I went to Catholic school. I was an altar boy, but nothing happened. Got out of that one, you know, totally clean too. So like no trauma in some of the normal places. But when I was, and I had been drawing, I was a little bit, I think as a child, I had found like an escape into drawing really early. Like I started drawing when I was like 5 or 6. And I just really, ever since I can remember, I just always kind of just double down on it, you know, from that evolution, like biological evolutionary perspective. I think it was a medium that I felt really comfortable communicating, you know, love and attention, and it was a way to be seen. You know, it's kind of a frail kid growing up. Wasn't really good at sports or anything else, so drawing just kind of just turned into a niche for me. But everything kind of went upside down when I was 11 years old. It was in November, and I all of a sudden I just kind of woke up and I was just super sick. A lot of my memories of it, because of the nature of the incident, the memories are kind of scrambled, but from what I can kind of piece together, woke up really sick, and after a day or so of sickness, had really bad headaches, and then there was a point where I wasn't able to like put together sentences anymore. And then so went to the hospital, you know, fast forward, get in an ambulance. I'm at the Children's Hospital in Denver, and I'm getting prepped for like an emergency brain surgery the next morning. And you know, it's, as a father now, it's just, I think about what my parents went through, and it's just like, it's terrifying, the idea of having to communicate to an 11-year-old that all of a sudden that there's something wrong with their brain and they need to operate. And when you're 11, they don't really tell you a lot, because I don't think really, we don't have a lot of really good ways to convey that information. But the experience was one of, when I think about it now, it's kind of like an alien abduction, you know, like all of a sudden, like your head's shaved. I'm in a lab. I'm getting like they have to inject dye into my brain for the CAT scan. So they're putting like a catheter in, 11-year-old, without any kind of like, what's a catheter? Like, why are you injecting dye through, like, what's going on? And then it was, I remember like being on the operating table, and the doctor, you remember these weird things, like the doctor asking like what kind of what flavor like gas you want like regular like bubble gum. And then like the lights were out, and then when the lights came back on, I couldn't really see. I didn't have any vision. I had like really blurry vision and like really incredible pain. And I mean, it turned out I had they call it like a venous anomaly, which is a type of blood clot in my right hemisphere. And it was expanding to like the size of an egg. And I was putting pressure against my brain. And, you know, thank goodness, like at the time, you know, part of the Android name is I'm kind of a product of technology, because without the types of technology they had and these incredible neurosurgeons, you know, this would be a one-way conversation right now. But I think the unsettlingness of the event in itself, just the randomness, you know, like not having any discernible origin of like why it happened or how it happened, and having an understanding of how close it was to being a fatal accident. But I feel like the recovery of it was almost more traumatic than the event. I can kind of, you know, you can kind of encapsulate the event as a bunch of really strange, painful things, but the recovery process was, it was rough. They had to inject Dilantin into my body. It was an anti-seizure medication because you couldn't keep anything down. And like, I saw a movie where I got traumatized by this. I got like re-traumatized by some movie that I saw recently. I can't remember what it was, but they injected the character with something, and when you get this stuff injected, it feels like fire going through your veins. And so having to have like continuous injections of like fire in your brain, in your veins. But really, I feel that what probably had the biggest fundamental impact on me was just the sense of, it was a radical change in like my sense of self. I was a, scrawny but fairly cute little kid the day before, and the next time my eyes can focus and I look in a mirror, I don't even recognize myself. I got this, you can see the scar. Camera can pick it. Let's see. Look for a thing that's like not a wrinkle, but it's like a straight line. Like the incision goes from here down to there. They pulled my face off, got in there, but the recovery of it's just like no hair, huge scar, whole face is like swollen and bruised from peeling your face off, as you do. And so I didn't recognize myself, but along with not recognizing myself, you saw that, you take for granted the way that people perceive you in the world based off of your what they remember of your physical appearance, or, just the human suit that we're wearing. And when that gets like radically mangled, the whole world, you start living in a different world when everyone is looking at you different. So it's kind of like, I feel like I kind of started in, it was a totally different life after that. It was kind of my life before the surgery and life after. And, the effects that it had, a lot of it was, I was raised with I went to Catholic school, like I said, so I was raised with a religious narrative. And, but after this, I pretty much just lost my faith and my trust, like in the world, as a dependable thing. I lost any sort of like childhood sense of like immortality. I realized that like death can come for anybody at any time. It's interesting. It's one of those things where I feel that when it comes to how we formulate like our belief systems, it's always really fascinating when you start kind of picking apart and diving deeper into like what we believe and why we believe things. But I feel like, as humans, we're prone to be kind of like meaning making machines. And I think as humans, it seems like we come up with the most clever or novel or nonsensical types of meaning in a vacuum, like in the absence of any meaning, when we're totally left to create that meaning. It's a wild card. What Lily say in the providence of the mind, what the mind believes becomes true. So, yeah, I just made up a total story about why it happened and what it meant and what I was supposed to do afterwards. And I think a lot of that was reinforced. Like my mom was, she was Catholic, so she kind of reinforced that, there's a reason that you're alive. It's really special. You've got something to do. And that I kind of wove that into my own inner narrative, that there must be something that I'm supposed to do. But the meaning I was definitely left with was that life is a really precious and short thing. And that there just isn't a lot of time left. And what we have is what we have, and to try to make the most of it and try to really make something with, like any of my life beyond that date is pretty much just like bonus level. So trying to make the best out of it. And for me, because the healing process, I think I was already on my way to being kind of a hermit, sort of like avoidant personality, but that just sort of put rocket fuel in the direction that fire was burning. And I found that that because the world was so, whether I was meant to be saved or not, the world was pretty terrifying to me, and didn't trust it, and didn't really trust people, didn't really like going out and seeing people. And so I just really retreated into the world of my imagination. And like my sketchbook that was a world that I had total control over. I made up the rules. I decided like where the horizon was. I populated it with characters that I created, that I had a relationship with. And yeah, I just totally kind of painted myself into a corner. You know, it was that and, you know, Super Nintendo, like that. And my sketchbook and like playing Metroid kind of got me through, you know. I mean, honestly, it was like those two things were super fundamental because they were very safe, controlled worlds where there was rules and things obeyed a rule, and I could understand it. And at that point, like I just needed I was kind of in this like abyss of uncertainty, and yeah, the sketchbook was just like a little life raft that I could not even, you know, try to like paddle the shore with.
Yeah. You've always seemed like somebody to me that doesn't have a lot of hesitation. Like if you want to do some sort of creative project, you just do it. And you seem really apt to take risks without a lot of, like fear around it, and very spontaneous. And I think perhaps that perspective comes out of you being in contact with your mortality at such an early age and realizing that life is precious and that there isn't a lot of time to waste. Whereas other people might really postpone whatever their dreams or creative urges are because they feel that there's this illusion that it could happen at some other time or place down the road.
Yeah, it definitely upped the ante on everything. And I do admit that I do display some tendencies of like recklessness around my creativity or vision, or I'm prone to like really illogical, irrational decisions. And I find that the pursuit of some type of a creative goal it's a hell of a enabler. When I look at like the different projects and the things and I don't know, like I bought this like huge Mack truck about a year ago for art, for Burning Man, to turn it into like a VR biofeedback laboratory. I'm thinking of just some of like the ridiculous things that I do. Like all of a sudden I realize I have to like buy a semi truck because I needed a laboratory for Burning Man to do biofeedback ketamine therapy on people. You know, it's like weird. You know, it's creativity is messy. You got to be able to make a mess and clean it up afterwards and do your best. We just turned it into a ball pit. So the lab is now like called it the command center. Now it's the mobile fun center. So I found like 2,000 ball pit balls on Craigslist yesterday for $10. Yeah,
Nice.
Rad. Yeah.
Gore.
Yeah, so my kids, we did ball. We were just raging the ball pit right before this call.
Nice. Mm-hmm. It seems like that irrational impulse, though, is like it's a really key component to generating novelty and to create something that's genuinely original or creative, right?
Yeah, I think that I think a lot of the great work that we see and the artists that we kind of admire were really restless souls. You know, they were people that were either like deeply unsatisfied with what was currently available, or they felt that the best use of their life and time was to kind of take their experiences and try to synthesize and create, you know, make something different, or recombine things in a new way. I think it's part of the human spirit. I mean, I believe everybody has a certain impulse, and I'm in a position of, you know, privilege to be able to exercise that freedom. And I really don't take for granted that I have the opportunity to do that. And so I try to I try to kind of carry that out with, you know, with great prejudice.
Hmm. What do you think drives you, and what has driven you throughout your life to create the works of art that you have? You said that it was something about communication. That's something that I relate to also. It's like sometimes I feel it's like to create a work of art, it's almost an act of intimacy. Like you're creating this thing that's from deep within you and trying to give voice to that in a way that you can't really communicate so much through words or through language. Like, here's what my soul looks like. And then when other people can have that experience of viewing that, you're almost sharing this deep part of yourself with the audience. But I'm kind of curious what you think has driven you to be such a prolific artist in your lifetime, and what drives you to want to create images and share them with the world.
It's the same thing that drives all of us, Jake. It's just love. You know, love is the fundamental fulcrum that powers this engine of manifestation. And it encapsulates like every different kind of love and lack of love too, you know. But it's like if there's one concurrent like through line behind all of it, it's all a manifestation of my own relationship with love, you know, whether it's, you know, at the high end of the spectrum, it's an expression of like my infinite love for the creator and God, and I'm painting a sunset and I'm trying to do my best as a human being to like write this love letter to God by trying to re-encapsulate my impression of like pristine and perfect nature. You know, there's like the high end, and love is also an inspiration when it comes from a deep place of insecurity and not having love and needing that love, and making an image and putting it out there and getting people's attention is the only way that you can try to feel, you know, that love. I think for me, one of the more like fundamental realizations or epiphanies that I had recently, I talked about this actually on the podcast a few days ago, is you know, being a father now is, if anyone out there is considering breeding one way or the other, and your conditions are favorable, and if you like love, if you like love and you like fun and you don't mind working hard, then parenthood just might be right for you. But yeah, it's the most amount of being a parent now, like the most amount of love I've ever felt in my whole life, and all of the cliches are totally true. Spoiler alert. But it was something that I had never really realized. A few things had happened a couple of years ago. One, my former future ex-father-in-law, John Perry Barlow, had passed, and so I was kind of in this state of grieving. And before that, Nova was born, my first daughter, and there was all these, you know, life was pretty full on, and it was really, there's a point where, you know, your love for a child is unconditional, but their love for you is totally conditional. I mean, they need you to survive, so it's in their best interest to like love you, but they don't have to, and you do earn it. Like, you really earn a child's love. And there's a certain point when they get old enough where you can actually feel them consciously loving you. Like, you can feel that choice. And Nova was she's the most precious and special person in my whole life. And it was like, there was a day where I saw her love me back. Like, I saw the love Taurus being like reciprocated. And it was one of these things where like that had happened, and I think that kind of sparked it off. I have these really incredible healers, these super bitchin' sisters here in Colorado that are the most gifted kind of psychic healers I've ever met. And they were doing a session on me, and all these things were spinning around. But within this healing session, and I'm not using healing session like it was, I'm like as a cover for psychedelics, like it was really just a straight up like anesthetic heal. Just
Right.
I'm not doing a dog whistle there. Like it was a real healing session. And in this healing section, it was, I don't have much of like a inner visual meditation sort of space, but just these huge, profound breakthroughs came through. And the big sort of takeaway is I realized that I had never really, I don't know when I stopped. I mean, it probably stopped sometime around the surgery. You know, there was nothing about the surgery left me feeling like victorious or of any like valor whatsoever. It was just kind of like a blow. But I just had this, like, it all made sense at the same time. And I just realized that I had never, I don't think, I would say never, say like, let's say 20 years, that I deep down, like I didn't really love myself. You know, like it was, like I feel that part of one of the factors of I guess one of the mechanisms of like a healthy internal emotional psycho-spiritual dynamic is connecting an energetic cord where you're feeding yourself your own. I think it's really important to love yourself, you know, be honest with yourself, but that self-love it's like one of the most important things I try to instill into my kids. And whatever that connection had totally gotten disconnected within me. And what I'd also realized is that in the absence of that love, I was, like, my entire life, part of what had shaped me and part of what had, when I say love is an inspiration, or the lack of love is also the same, lack of love can actually be a more powerful inspiration than abundance of love, you know, because you have an abundance of love. What do you have to prove? Nothing, you know, you don't need, zero. But when you have a severe lack of love, and especially a lack of fundamental self-love, the ego will go to incredible lengths in order to try to fill that hole. I mean, it's just a void, and the more you put in it, you know, the bigger it gets. And so in a strange, indirect way, I can see that when I look back at all of the work that I've created, how much of it, or at least during some of the years where it was really prolific, but how much of the expression of my art and my career really owes itself to me making a really futile attempt. Because I wasn't able to love myself, I could put myself into a piece of artwork, and the praise or adoration or likes were just like a really sick surrogate for the lack of self-love. And because it all starts with self. Like, if you're not able to love yourself, even in the relationships I was with, I wasn't really able to accept other people's love. Like, when you can't love yourself, it's not just you're not loving yourself. It's like you have, I believe without that circuit operating, there's also a blockage for you to accept anybody else's love at all. And like Nova's love helped sort of like clear the blockage of that. And yeah, it's just trippy, you know, when you think about that. And when I look at all my favorite artists now, and I look back at them, like I look at all of their, like, a body of work, and I'm like, yep, this work is incredible. This artist totally didn't love themselves at all, you know, like Picasso, I don't think he loved himself. You think some of them, they look like just extreme narcissists. You're like, of course they love themselves. Like Hunter S. Thompson, what a tale of caution. I think the guy had any type of self-love. But in the absence of that, incredible things can happen, you know. I'm not trying to make a case for you'll have a more prolific career if you don't love yourself. I think that loving yourself is, I think there's a lot of really great artists that I guess do love themselves and also create amazing work too. But I feel that, don't you feel that that's almost in the minority, you know?
I think it's a cultural thing.
Yeah.
I can really relate to your story. I feel like that's been a huge aspect of my own personal healing journey as well. And I think that a lot of it comes through sort of socialization. You know, it's like in the culture that we grew up in Western culture, we're sort of trained to believe that we're not worthy of love until we earn it. And to earn it, you have to do these really outlandish things and be very successful. And that means something very specific in order to receive love. And like living here in Bali is interesting because I find that in Balinese culture, it's quite different. They don't seem to have a lot of poverty of love, and they seem to have these really strong community connections and really strong connections with spirit and with family that, you know, and they're quite content. They don't have that same pressure to have to go out and achieve or to do something extra special in order to receive love. And I think it's kind of like an endless pursuit. You can chase that love for your whole life or chase that point where you're worthy of it, but never really find it. And a lot of people don't ever, you know, make that realization that it has to be generated internally, and they're constantly seeking it through external validation and striving to get that. And
Yeah.
I just, yeah, in terms of art, what came to mind when you were saying there are artists that create phenomenal works of art and still love themselves, I think about like, you know, Tonka painting and stuff like that,
Yeah.
you
Yeah,
know,
sure.
like in Tibetan culture or other sort of Buddhist or Hindu cultures where it seems like they have a stronger connection to God and spirit than other people
Yeah.
do.
It's a
And
great
they still
example.
create
Yeah.
amazing works of art.
Like Romeo loves himself for sure. Romeo Shrestha. Um,
Yeah.
we've been hanging out. He comes over to the farm. We've been like doing some projects together. I don't know. It's a total tangent, but Tonka art. If anyway, well, I never really got Tonkas before hanging out with Romeo and seeing his Tonkas in person. He like comes out and just rolls out these huge Tonkas like in the living room. And yeah, just I've come to realize that Tonka is one of the perfect forms of art. Like it's a perfect expression encapsulated within itself. It's really rare in the world of art. You know, we have this art history where, I mean, we're so unsatisfied with what we do in a Western artistic sense that we always have to break the dishes and come up with something new because we're repulsed by the shadow of what we did before. Like there's this always marching forward onward, you know, throughout all of the different iterations and evolutions of art history. There's just been Tonka. It's been Tonka, like Impressionism, Tonka, Post-Impression, Tonka, Modernism, Tonka. You know, it's an
For
incredible
thousands of
expression.
years.
It's an incredible example. I'm glad you brought that into the conversation. It is an incredible example of one of the highest potentials of like human creativity within a fundamental and healthy mental, spiritual, emotional, physical framework.
Yeah, it comes out of deep, deep stillness and presence. And if you ever watch the artists that are working on it, they're in a complete meditative state while they're painting. The level of concentration and presence, it's like their entire attention is absorbed within that creative process.
Yeah.
And I kind of believe that a work of art, it sort of encapsulates the psychic energy of the artist when they're creating it. So if an artist is creating from a place of pain or that sense of lack that you're talking about, that's going to be kind of crystallized within the artwork. But when you stand in front of a Tonka painting, you can kind of commune with this higher state of consciousness that the artist was in when they were actually creating it.
Yeah, there's something about when you look at one of these Tonkas that, you know, some of these, he had this one Tonka scroll that I have this I've got like a 40-inch kind of like a scanner. It's like a roll scanner. So he came over to scan all of these Tonkas, and some of these Tonkas he has, I mean, they're like, I don't know, 40 feet long. You know, he has this one Tonka that's basically like it encapsulates like all the lessons of the like the Tibetan health and wellness. Like the whole thing reads as like like an operating manual for the human bio machine. And just this one Tonka alone, like it represents 240 years of human consciousness when you add up all the work, because you had several people working on it. You know, it must have been hung up against like a long wall with all the artists that worked on it simultaneously. Like the amount of just like calories spent is 240 years of all these artists. And yeah, there's something about that when you see these images, there's like an intrinsic, like whether you like it or not, or it's your thing, or it's your style, or whatever, there's almost like an intrinsic value that's just communicated just from the sheer force of human will that powered this. And then you see the organization behind it, and you see the beauty, and you start seeing they're kind of like an onion. They just keep revealing deeper and deeper aspects. But yeah, it's an incredible thing. But I think the thing that, from my Western mind, you know, from a very, whether it's healthy or unhealthy, that I think the part of me that rebels against the Tonkas, or what's sort of stopping me from pivoting into being like a new Tonka painter right now. I don't know if I could, there's something about, one of my favorite things about art and the creative experience is just diving into an abyss of not knowing, and the unlimited amount of freedom and potential that I can experience while trying to like collapse the fractal of infinite possibilities. You know, like that's, leaning into that edge is what gives me the rush of the creative experience, you know. And I think that's something, to be fair too, I don't want to over dramatize the lack of love as a creative force. Part of what I'd say that's a factor. I think the other factor that also enabled the amount, like the art that I've created, was I've always really focused on having a process and a technique that was deeply like meaningful, and something that I just really enjoyed. You know, that being in the throes of a creative experience, and when you get really deep and you get kind of past the inner critic and past the bullshit, and you're looking down at these hands and wondering whose hands these are you like, that thrill, the neurochemical cocktail that my brain creates is, it's a level of inner pharmaceutical that I'm hopelessly addicted to, you know. And it's the addiction to that. You were talking about the other factors too, within, and to make it more complicated, within this, you know, each individual artist and their art being a expression of where they fall on the spectrum of loving themselves or not loving themselves. Another really crucial aspect of, I think, being an artist as a human being, and, you know, I think as you get older, you start realizing some more of the subconscious and unconscious motivators behind your decisions. And yeah, just from like it just gotta, I think it's important just to mention from the evolutionary biological perspective, how much of our actions as an artist, or I'll speak for myself as an artist, was really the most advanced form of signaling that I had. You know, it's like, I wasn't good at sports. I didn't feel like learning how to play the guitar, but making a portrait and drawing was whether I knew it back then, looking back, like it was a technique and a strategy in order to give me increase the possibilities of finding a healthy and appropriate mate. And I think, you know, from when you read some of the literature, it's really pretty fascinating how much of our actions, whether it's conscious or unconscious, are motivated by just kind of following our biological programming.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, it seems like most of the things that drive people are unconsciously driven by that same desire to demonstrate that they have, you know, higher survivability and you know,
Right.
reproduction than most other people. And
Yeah.
What's interesting about that to me, though, is that there's stuff within that that's also culturally ingrained, like what we find attractive, or what people in our culture find attractive, is somewhat programmed as well, and it's not necessarily all biologically inherent. And when you look at that in that way, it's kind of like all of our desire for reproduction is to grow this kind of society. Also, like it's like we're also an extension of the desires of society itself, you know. And that's really interesting to me because when you start to kind of awaken out of the programming of just being completely in line with the values of our culture and society, it just makes me kind of wonder what the deeper motivation is and to what end society is continuing to just grow and develop, you know? And it seems like a lot of what our society is based around now is based around technological advancement, you know, and that's also one of those things that people seem to be motivated to do that for the purpose of mate signaling and stuff like that. And it kind of, it makes me wonder what the deeper motivation is for all that technological advancement, and if that momentum is driven by a deeper urge than just for us to achieve and to grow societally.
Yeah, I'd say that, you know, if you look at the larger patterns, there is something that is beyond just signaling. You know, I think we can see that it certainly looks like there's a larger meta narrative at play. I was going to say for the signaling stuff, you know, Jeffrey Miller's a really great source. People want to like look at some books for that. But with the technology, you ever read any like Marshall McLuhan?
Mm-hmm.
Medium is the message, or medium is the massage. He's an incredible philosopher. He has a really interesting sort of take on technology, as he was really his time, he was in like the 40s, 50s, sort of early 60s. One of these guys, he kind of predicted what we know as Google and Amazon. He's a very visionary, really ahead of his time. Really incredible track record for how many of the things he thought were going to happen ended up happening. But he kind of looked at technology. I'm just going to paraphrase a lot here, but he saw technology as an extension, all different types of technology as an extension of the human being, an extension of our, say, like radio and TV were happening for him. These are like extensions of our nervous system. The reason we have a society is obviously it's because of technology. It's a way of sort of navigating ourselves, and I guess from like what you said, like the signaling sort of like breeding capacity. I think a lot of the justification of technology is trying to really impose our will over nature in order to ensure our survival. Because as you know, on one hand, nature is the most incredible and beautiful and purest source of truth and expressed in material form. And like nature will totally eat you, it's like, it can be a really dangerous thing. And so we make this technology to ensure our survival in a lot of ways. But I think there's this part of us that are just, there's part of, like, for my own sort of story, like I love tools. I love tools as an extension of my will, of exercising my will in a material world. Like I love drills and saws and grinders and chainsaws. Like I love looking at something and be like, okay, I'm going to tame this nature and turn it into a chicken coop right now. There's something really just naturally and inherently satisfying around that. I love these new creative tools because the creation of art is, it's such an incredible, when you're making art, it's such an incredible medium for exploring your own consciousness. And every tool and every new tool that I use, once you become comfortable with the tool and it becomes almost second nature, it creates a whole different conversation and leads to totally new opportunities for that inner reflection and exploration. I mean, I think it's like, I love my consciousness within, like, up against the friction of tools while I make art. And I don't know if yeah, it's hard to say if it's natural, if it's nature or nurture that is the reason behind that. But it's become I just know from my own story, it's become an incredibly inherent part of my life. And, you know, I tell people my name is Android, you know, like obviously I have some bias around technology.
We have about like maybe 10 minutes left. Yeah, it's up to you, man. If you want to keep going after this, we can. I know we said we'd cap it at an hour, but it seems like we're getting into interesting territory. If you want to keep talking.
Sure. Yeah, I'm here, man.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I sent you that video with that guy Kevin Kelly talking about the technium. I mean, his observation is that the way technology develops is very similar to the way new species develop in nature, and you can see a lot of parallels. And he's suggesting that it's more of a arbitrary separation that we make to consider technology not a part of nature, and that it's almost like you can almost study it like it's another group of a life form or something
Mhm.
that has wants, much like plants have wants, where plants orient themselves towards light. You know, they have these little robots that go around and seek their own source of power
Yeah.
and stuff like that. I'm curious though if like, because you've talked a lot about artificial intelligence and the singularity and stuff like that, and when I look at your work, there's the obvious technological influence, but you seem also really deeply aligned with the kind of values of the Gaian mind and nature, and that's also a theme that runs through your work a lot. I'm kind of curious if you think that the emergence of artificial intelligence and these more sophisticated technologies are in line with the kind of needs and desires of the Gaian mind. You know, if it's something that is in harmony with nature or against it.
Yeah. That's interesting. I mean, it's all on one element, you know, I used to kind of go by the electromineralism, like it's all, everything we're doing is nature, you know, technology is a manipulation of nature. You know, and when it comes to kind of artificial intelligence, the way that I've started, I think, thinking of it lately is like with AI, I think it's important to, the perspective I have on it is that we are that already. Like what we are, we're an AI. Like we are the human biocomputer. Like we are self-actualized robots. We're robots made of molecules and flesh. And like the idea of, you know, the fear that we have of AI is that AI could recursively like make better AI. It's like we're a part of that already. So, and at the same time, when I think there's a deeper, when I the more time I kind of spend out in nature and just seeing like the majesty of nature, and a lot of this has come from just my work in last 4 years. I spend most of my creative time in Unreal and in VR, trying to, you know, create worlds and simulate natural elements of the world around me. And, you know, regardless of how many polygons, you know, Sweeney's gonna give us Unreal developers, or how fast like the video cards we have. I mean, when you compare anything you can sort of recreate or a facsimile against like the genuine article and the molecular density and beauty of nature, you know, all of our technology is still like rubbing sticks together. You know, I think it's important like not to get too ahead of ourselves. I was hanging out with Bruce Damer. You should talk to him sometime. And
Oh yeah,
we were having this
awesome.
AI talk, and kind of held up a little, there's like a half empty cup of water. And he was saying on a molecular level, there's more calculations that are happening, more data and more calculations are happening in this glass of water than in all the supercomputers on Earth. So I feel we get a little ahead of ourselves, and it's a little bit of a hubris for us to just fantasize that we're going to create like a race of robots that are, you know, I mean, we should be so lucky that we could create like a new form of consciousness that would take over the world, you know. Not to say that we can't make tools and that are incredibly dangerous to mankind. Obviously, I think our technological means have far surpassed our morality a long time ago. So there are some inherent things to really be concerned about when it comes to technology. Like I watched the video that you sent, and it was a great video, but I did feel that he was delivering a bit of like the rosy perspective of technology and its place. You know, as far as I guess how it goes to the guy in mind, like I don't think there's a lot of accidents. Like I feel that we are kind of on the timeline that it feels like the way that we've used technology now, that there's something natural about its growth. You kind of track it on a curve. Not natural in the way where it seems almost like inevitable. You know, it's inevitable that we would have gotten to this point. And at the same time, it's incredibly novel that we'd have reached this. But I'm not totally convinced that it's just all guy in mind. You know, I think there's a lot of different things that are influencing the technology that we have. When I think of the guy in mind, I really think of a lot. And when I think of human consciousness and animal consciousness, kind of from an elemental level. And have you ever read any John C. Lilly?
A little bit, yeah.
Or the Cyclone or Scientist?
Yeah.
I think his work has a lot of the answers that you're looking for. But I don't know if this is the best place to leave things, but he had John C. Lilly is one of my heroes. I think he's one of the most like underrepresented heroes of the psychedelic movement.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, he's an amazing thinker.
I don't know if he had the bad PR department or what, but whatever. I hope when it all shakes down, he gets the credit he deserves. But you know, his philosophy around it, he kind of separated things into we are part of like a water-based consciousness. Whales and dolphins represent like the highest and the most powerful form of consciousness, just from their brain size alone. They are kind of like at the top of the food chain of water-based consciousness, like a blue whale. And what he saw in the depths of his sort of journeys, and we could have this whole conversation around John C. Lilly and his adventures. But one of the major downloads that he had was getting from his experiments with ketamine, LSD, deprivation tanks. You know, he went to some pretty wild places in the pursuit of science and the expansion of human conscious potential. But he kind of at the depths of some of the realms and the different levels he was going at, he kept coming in contact with what he considered it like that there's water-based consciousness, and in the universe there's also silicon-based consciousness, and he kind of called it like the solid state entity is what he referred to it as. You know, this is way before like solid state drive, but that's what he saw it as a form of consciousness that had been influencing it was influencing humans and our decisions for, I mean, I don't know how far it went back, say hundreds of years, but a lot of our technological development was coming from a non-Gaian perspective, and was coming from like there was an outside influence that was encouraging more a greater dependency and an exploration of almost creating more of the silicon consciousness itself. I just put that out there for people to look into. I can't, you know, I don't think I've ever really encountered the solid state entity myself, but I've had a lot of experiences kind of early on, especially with working with during kind of like the live painting days, where I've definitely, I guess I could say, like, I've felt influences outside of myself that have been throughout my life that have been very encouraging of the exploring creativity with different types of technology. I've definitely received a lot of guidance there. Is that Gaia or insectoids or a solid state? You know, who knows? Like, I still need to work on my like astral caller ID, but I know I've gotten nudges and pushes in a lot of different directions, and most of them have all been incredibly encouraging.
Awesome. I don't want this live to cut off like mid-sentence.
Oh, okay.
What if we kind of cut it there, because it's going to end like any minute now, and hop on another one, and I'll send you the live when that's up.
Right now?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, are you okay with that?
Yeah, totally.
Okay, cool, man. Yeah, we'll chat for just a bit longer. I think this is interesting territory. Yeah, you're back.
Great.
So yeah, so we were talking about John Lilly and his ideas. Something I've always found really insightful that John Lilly was talking about is, oh, hi.
Hi, Jake.
Hey, Martha. Hi.
The better half. Oh, yeah.
Did you say hi, Jake?
Little fractals.
Take your hand out so he can hear you. Say hi, Jake.
Hi.
What's your name?
Oh, yeah. Where's Nova?
Nova.
Oh, yeah. Say hi, Nova.
Hi, Nova. Hi.
You're my friend, Jake.
Cute.
My masterpieces. Yeah.
Safety first.
They seem safe. I like the safety outfits.
Yeah, I just
wear a helmet.
Yeah, what's up, babe? Are you done with the ball pit?
It's,
Okay.
It's time to go to bed. No.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, honey. No, but you can watch some animals. Come on. Night-night. Bye-bye.
Yeah. I don't know. Very soon. I'll come up when I'm done. Oh, I'll come and watch animals with you real soon. All right. What were we talking about, Jake?
Cute. Yeah, we were talking about John Lilly and his ideas. Something I always found really fascinating that John Lilly talks about is, I think he was one of the first thinkers to really explore the concept of our consciousness being sort of like a supercomputer. And, the ability to program our own mind and beliefs, and kind of how all of our actions in the world are an extension of those fundamental belief systems, and that we can influence those through certain technologies. So like, I find float tanks actually to be awesome for trying to dive into the depths of your consciousness to uncover what beliefs are there and to sort of influence them, and try to change our perspectives on life and reality. And obviously he was using psychedelics a lot for that as well.
Yeah, I think sometimes, there's the technology of just like the natural technology of the human body is so vast, and there's so much potential, but especially in Western civilization, I don't think it hasn't been a lot of kind of a mainstream education on how to access the, say like the infinite power of mind. And I think a lot of times we create technology as a surrogate to try to gain access to what could be naturally discovered in our own human potential. But because there isn't, we weren't born with instruction manuals or user guides. Just checking out the command center.
Can you play here?
Yeah, we can play in here. So here's ready for this, Nova? Let's go. And we're in the ball pit.
Nice.
Yeah. These ball pits are incredible technology.
Dad,
Yeah.
I'll just down.
Okay.
Awesome. You want to go play in the ball pit?
I can try to multitask here for a while.
Okay. Yeah,
I've been playing in the ball pit all afternoon.
Okay. Yeah. I don't mean to keep you longer than you need to be here for. Um, yeah, I'm curious also, just, you know, you were talking about how when you were younger, you sort of found it challenging to have that connection with love, and, or like source or whatever you want to call it. Have you found that ayahuasca and these kinds of things have been like a vehicle for you to be able to come back into contact with that source? And
Yeah.
has that dramatically influenced your creativity as well?
I think from the standpoint of, they've definitely deepened, like say, on a broad stroke, they've really, oh nice, really deepened my understanding or lack of understanding, or at least appreciation of just like the mystery of life. Yeah, what's up? Okay, everybody watch this. We're watching. Ladies and gentlemen, Nova Jones, head first, into the ball pit. Oh, awesome. That was great. That was a good one. She's getting a pro at this. Yeah, so with those things, they've, you know, I think that it's got like some of that, I don't want to like put all like, I think the experience I've had in ayahuasca, I put those in a separate category than other types of some visionary experiences, just out of respect for Aya as an actual entity and a spirit. She's had an incredible impact on my life and really grateful for it. But I think from the, if we want to kind of look at it as like, what's the, like the logistical value, or what, as an artist, what are the, what were sort of my takeaways? I think it was interesting, like when I first even started getting interested in ayahuasca, like I totally had a visionary art agenda around it. You know, I wanted to see these scenes and use the technology of art and imagination to like bring these things back into the real world. And there were so many times where she would just totally kick my ass, and as soon as I get into the realm, she would be like, "You had an agenda? Like you thought, oh, you wanted to get something out of this?"
Yeah.
So they've added an incredible amount of depth to my life, just from being like near death simulation experiences. You know, every time you go through that, and you know, not pleasant, they're great opportunities for like burning karma. You know, the amount of like suffering that I've had to endure, I've endured through like my self subjection to those experiences. I'd like to think that I burned some karma during that, but they're incredible. You know, I think the power of a simulated near-death experience is the amount of renewed gratitude that you feel for the rest of your life that you have. I started becoming a little concerned that I was, when I kind of got into my, like my ayahuasca years, there was a certain point where I think you made a reference to kind of like the risk taking and the chances that I took with art. I feel like I applied that same philosophy towards the psychedelic exploits and adventures that I went on there. And there's a period of time where it was like, it's pretty reckless, you know, definitely listen, like, don't do this at home type of moments and experiences, and definitely getting burned a lot of time too. You know, like I wouldn't wish some of the things I had on my worst enemies if I had worst enemies. But they do have an uncanny ability to make you realize all the things that you have taken for granted, and they give you a bit of like a kind of a fresh canvas to be able to kind of course correct on places and shadows and blind spots that you had. And at the same time, I started to really question if I just felt like I was becoming kind of like a near-death junkie, you know? Like you have your first one, which is so incredible, so ultimately cinematic, like the most immersive thing ever. And then I could see myself kind of over the years, like almost like wanting to recreate that thing again, and sort of like chasing the dragon of the first near death with the second one. And just, it's not a real, it's not a sustainable addiction. I don't recommend it. You know, there's a certain point where it's kind of like you get the message and you get the phone call, and it's like the Toad. Like I've done Toad, I think I'd say 2 meaningful times. And the first time with the Toad, you know, all the secrets of the universe were sort of like in a knowing, in a kind of a gnosis way, I felt were like revealed to me instantaneous through like a unbelievable like heart connection with the universe. Like all of the questions I had were instantly answered. And then I had another opportunity to kind of be with the Toad. Really, like it was just one of the, I guess Lily would say echo, like the ECCO, Earth Coincidence Control Offices, were messing around. And I met a totally different Toad shaman 4 days after my first experience. And as soon as I went in there, the first thing, the Toads are just like, what are you doing back here already? Like, did you not get the first one? Like, did we stutter? Was there something you're missing here? It's like, for real? So it's moderation in moderation.
Yeah, I remember it was at the MAPS conference, I think, but you said that there was a point of your life where, like, if anybody offered you any drugs, you just said yes. And
I don't know if I said that. I mean, I'd say I think I'd probably always say maybe, but I don't know. I try not to do. I have a pretty good rule about like not doing too many sketchy things from strangers.
That's a good rule. But yeah, I still think that kind of unbridled psychedelic exploration is one of the bravest things that anybody can do. When I look at, like, you know, Sasha Shulgin, or somebody who just kind of gallantly dived into those realms again and again and again, based on the kinds of occasionally terrifying experiences that I've had with high doses of psychedelics, like, I just have so much respect for that kind of exploration, you know, because it is like, it's very it can be very uncomfortable, very uncertain to dive into those realms.
Yeah, no, it takes a lot of courage. And I look back and I'm just like, something like, I don't know what I was thinking. Like, I think it was easier too. I mean, I think we all have, there's different times of our life, different opportunities present themselves, and there's like different stakes. And, you know, I'd say like now I'm at a point where I still have got a lot of questions and I don't have a lot of answers. At some point I have to figure out what my answers are, because she's going to start asking me the big questions pretty soon. I need to get my story straight on like what it is that I need to program her with. But I don't know. I think during sort of like those sort of crazy years, I felt like there was a lot. There was definitely some times where it just felt like nothing. I knew I had a lot to lose, but I don't know. It was just, there was so much to explore, and I saw an opportunity, and I saw something it was worthy of exploring. And I felt that with, you know, the rule that I always kind of had was that, you know, because I was from the visionary perspective with art, I'm like a method actor. You know, I would create art in the visionary state was kind of the story that I was on, you know, and it was really about connecting and opening up my consciousness and creating art in like a heightened creative state of conscious like awareness and exploration. And yeah, there's just a crazy things came through, and like some were beautiful and some were totally dangerous. And I'm really grateful I did it and had the opportunity. I've got like, I don't have that same sort of like unbridled curiosity that I do now, because now I've got other like awesome, beautiful things that give me infinite fascination, you know?
Yeah.
That evolutionary programming, man, is just like, I gotta tell you, once, you know, I don't think I can really easily put into words. I think it was after I had Escher. I mean, with Nova it was incredible, but once I had Escher, once we had the boy, and we had these really awesome. And you guys thinking of kids, like if you have the opportunity, natural water birth, 100% all the way. That's super crucial. P.S. After Escher was like safely delivered, and I went on like a walk. I think I was holding you at the time, Nova. We went on a walk, and you were still super little. You weren't like talking yet. But I was just looking at the sunrise one morning, and once I had the kind of conscious awareness of like, I don't know what it is about like dudes and being a man, but it was seeing that Martha and I, we produced 2 healthy children, and one was a girl. And there's something about the boy with Escher. It was like, okay, I'm a man, and I created another man. There was this point where like I connected the psychological circuit around it, and I can't express the amount of relief, like what the dopamine that whatever biological program that's ingrained with us released at that moment. It felt like there was the fact that I'd gone through the whole gauntlet of life and experience, and out of all the possible outcomes, that I landed an outcome where I had 2 beautiful, healthy children from like just the evolutionary mammal programming drive. It was like this weight that had been on my shoulders like my entire life. Just not only just like it, as it evaporated, just lifted me up into a new state of being, which is awesome. It's so awesome. Like checkbox, 2 kids. Right. And, I'm just getting, we got a long way to go. So we're not out of the woods yet, but so far, so good.
How has having kids changed your creativity and your creative impulse? Do you find that the sort of stuff that you want to create is a lot different now that you have a kid, or that you have kids?
It's totally different. I mean, look at this. You think I'm ever going to make any piece of art that's more beautiful than she is? Oh, get out of here. Impossible, right? Impossible. Yeah. So, I mean, a lot of my art now, it's just the art of, I'm more focused on the art of like healthy, awesome parenting, It's like, I still really love making art. It's still like a part of me, but there's, yeah. That's a good idea. We're going to go pretty soon. Yeah, I feel you. Yeah. Like I said before, there isn't like a hungry ghost that feels like I don't feel like I need to prove anything anymore. It's like I've done things that are really cool. Like whatever we do as an artist, it's going to be a finite amount of things. We did the Opera House. We did New York. We got a show in the Smithsonian. It's like if there's like ego check boxes I need to check off, as like that, if I don't do these things, I won't feel fulfilled. Like those are pretty much done. So, yeah. And a lot of it's really just, it's kind of like the art of life is super important, like, this is like my legacy now. And the amount of time and energy that it would be impossible for me to be like, have enough authentic experience as a father and put anywhere near the amount of focus and energy I put into being an artist when I was single. It would be selfish, and it would be like irresponsible. That being said, like I still really enjoy making art. There's still a lot of pieces in me that I feel inspired to make. And when I can like carve out a certain amount of runway, I try to make the most of it and like make it meaningful. But yeah, I don't know. Like I said, I find new ways of expressing creativity, like making a ball pit in the back of the semi truck. Like this is my artwork today. Like totally put this thing together last night. Got the balls off Craigslist yesterday, and got to surprise them today. And like just the endorphin rush you see when you see like your children like playing within your own creation is just so sweet.
That's my dad. My dad says, "Love to see you in the place you're in, with love from one father to another."
Your dad's awesome. You got a great dad.
I got a good dad for sure.
Yeah.
Awesome, bro. Yeah, I feel like that's a pretty rad place to land things.
That's a rad place. Yeah, I can feel good about that dismount.
Cool, man.
Animals.
Yeah, thanks
Yeah,
so
I'm
much for
gonna
your
watch
time.
the
This was
animals.
awesome. Really
Hey,
inspiring
thanks,
chat.
Jake. Yeah, and it's like if you want some fun, like, just wanted to recognize, like, I watched part of that interview that you did of me. Was it in 2009?
It was like 2009, I think. Yeah, like a long
Yeah,
time
I
ago.
think it was like the first YouTube interview anyone had ever done with me. You did at my studio in Zion. I watched like the first half of it, and then I didn't watch the other two parts because I was like, oh man, I'm just gonna be thinking about it too much. But if there's any like people that really want to go deeper, compare this conversation to the version of me back in 2009, because those were some primo years. Like everything that I saw, I still stand by the things that I said back then 100%, or I strive to, for sure.
Cool, man. Yeah, we're both in pretty dramatically different places than we were back then. It's amazing how life changes
So fast.
so fast.
Yeah.
Awesome, man. Much
Well,
love to you.
Yeah.
And
Take
to
care of
Neil.
yourself, and yeah, man. Thanks everybody that's watching this, and thanks for your attention. And I love all you guys that I don't get to see anymore. I hope you guys are doing good. Stay healthy. Just keep everybody safety first. I don't know. Yeah. Oh, she's safety first. You safety first. But yeah, love you guys. Love you too, Jake. Appreciate
Cool.
it.
Love you, man. Much love. See you soon.
Okay. See you.
The Quarantine Sessions podcast with J. Cole.